For all the people out there who claim that Israel is a quote unquote apartheid state, I assume that you are either misinformed or being misled, or you literally have no idea what an apartheid state is. Now, I happen to be a product of the apartheid, or at least I am first generation out of an apartheid. My father and mother were both born into an apartheid state in Zimbabwe, which meant that there was actual segregation, separation on the basis of race. The blacks lived there, the whites lived there. The blacks could not go there where the whites were. The blacks went to school there, the whites went to school there. And when my dad was in his teen years, he was one of the first black students to go to a white school. He went to a school by the name of Churchill, ironically enough. He was one of the first, I believe, 5 or 6 black students to go to that all-white school. They were the first to integrate. And, well, as far as the stories that he shares, life was difficult. Even when there was now integration, life was difficult. There was bullying, there was harassment. I mean, he would explain to me that you have these white students, juniors, seniors, who are off at war being told that these black people are your enemies because you're at war. And then they would come to campus or come back to school, and then here they're seeing a black student sitting right next to them. So again, times were hard, but my dad was able to not only survive in that environment, but he was able to thrive. And after the fact, he became a very successful businessman in his own respect, right? Continued to build his way up, even in the socialist totalitarian government that was created by Robert Mugabe, the dictator. He was still able to become successful in spite of what he experienced. Now let's bring it to Israel, because most of those who claim that, there's this occupancy of the colonizer. Let's just get into that one real fast. Colonizer. Interesting. So you have a group of people who are quite literally surrounded by their enemies, surrounded by their opposition, surrounded by those who want to see them destroyed. A tiny little group of people, right? Maybe 7 to 9 million of them living in this tiny little nation state, surrounded by a somehow group of people who are not considered colonizers, even though their religion, their customs, their practices, their doctrine has been spread throughout the world to close to 2 billion. So here you have a group of people, maybe 7 to 9 million living on this little plot of land. And there's only 14 million of them nationwide, globally, versus 2 billion people. And somehow these guys are the colonizers. Okay, got you. So you obviously must not know what the definition of colonizer is either, right? How many people speaking Hebrew? How many people speak Arabic? How many people practice Islam? How many people practice Judaism? So anyway, story for another time. Let's get back to apartheid. So an apartheid state, there is a distinct delineation between that's where they are, that's where we are. They are second-class citizens. Now, who for the life of them would move into that sort of environment knowing that they would be a second-class citizen? Who would move into an environment knowing that they would be discriminated against, not able to, live in certain neighborhoods, etc.? As a matter of fact, in what apartheid state would you find, 2 million or so individuals who would be oppressed moving into that place, where you would have hundreds of thousands of people who work in that very same state? I want to get to these subject matters from a place of just pure logic. We don't have to get that deep into the doctrinal. We don't have to get that deep into the philosophical. Let's just look at the hard facts. When you have 2 million Arabs, Muslims, who live freely in Israel, when you have the capital, Tel Aviv, saturated with folks practicing Islam, yet if a Jew were to find themselves outside of Israel, Yet if you as an Israeli or a quote unquote Jew were to find yourself outside of Israel in one of those sundown towns like the ones we often talked about in American history, right? If you were to find yourself in one of these sundown towns, what would likely be your fate? An apartheid state would not be welcoming to the very people who have it in their doctrine to erase your group of people completely. Now, I recently did a video going over what I call the genocide, because that's what it is. And no genocide, it's a genocide that's taking place right now, where we are being propagandized to believe that these people are being ethnically cleansed on the basis of their, ethnicity, their religion, etc., which is the clinical definition of a genocide. Well, they're being targeted specifically for who they are. No, these people are being retaliated against because of what their own regime allowed for. Hamas, surprise, surprise, is actually supported by many of those very same people who are using them, or at least as Hamas is using, as those human shields, as essentially martyrs for the cause. And yet you have Arabs, Muslims moving freely through Israel today. Today. Think about that. The very same people, or at least the very same ethnic group who broke into your country, violated your people, executed, kidnapped. Those people, family members of these people, come to live with you. And they live freely with you. They can pray. They can practice. And yet they are an apartheid state. That to me is genuinely offensive to those who've actually been through that. Shout out to, I think his name is Pastor Dumisani, and he speaks extensively and in very detailed manner when it comes to these issues. Imagine the person who actually lived through an apartheid regime. Actually. To hear that, oh, well, those people are going through what you went through. It's like the genocides. Imagine coming out of, many of the genocides that have actually taken place throughout this globe. Imagine you in Rwanda who survived that atrocity. Imagine you, maybe in America, maybe, I don't know, somewhere in Europe right now, who went through the Holocaust, whose family was wiped out, hearing that was a genocide. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Now, if you'd like to stay around, make sure to click that little subscribe button down there, or you can show some love by going to the description below and clicking on the button titled Buy Me a Coffee. Leave a little something there, or click on the Cash App. Leave a little something here. Till the next time, peace.
I fell in love with the sunshine. I fell in love with the light. I fell in love with the full moon. I fell in love with the night. I can see the light again. I can see the light. You can see the life in him illuminate the night. I know the time is taking. A 365, that's a full rotation. I see you looking up, you know them constellations. Constantly gazing like house of praises, you get to praising.